Chapter 136. Prior to this, everyone had a consensus that in a skeleton squad, the unique one must be the captain. It wasn't a mistake as everyone had already proved this point. Once this unique individual was identified and taken out, the whole skeleton squad would lose its teamwork and become scattered and chaotic. From a certain perspective, they felt that the average intellect of the skeleton squad wasn't that high, and the only intelligent one was the leader who also gave the orders, resulting in a highly operative squad. Someone previously said that the skeleton must have lost his spear and everyone else thought that it was hilarious. How could that be possible? We're talking about a skeleton and a combat weapon. If you said that a human being lost an eraser or a pen, it would be believable, but a skeleton losing a weapon was too ridiculous. But the truth was, it was really lost. Wait, no, someone took it. Everyone suddenly realized that their mindset was too narrow to consider such a point. But it was unthinkable that the Daoyuan student would actually rob a horseman. The first instincts of anyone who saw these skeletons would be to kill them or they would be killed. Who would even think about robbing them of their weapons? In reality, everyone admired this guy. This Daoyuan student wouldn't be able to defeat the horseman and with any delay, he could be instantly surrounded. In the end, he did the unthinkable. Instead of killing, might as well rob the weapon and run. What kind of thinking was that? Lu Shu was still on the run and as he was agilely passing through the mountains, he suddenly received a bunch of distress points of about 3,000 plus in total. He was confused. Where did this distress points come from and why were all the names foreign to him? An occasional distress points from an individual was understandable, but what was going on with this sudden income? Could it be that his comment on a life lesson on the Golden Foundation website was finally seen? Lu Shu was suddenly excited. Do I have fans? It never occurred to him that the incident of him snatching the spear had resulted in the distress of the group of Heavenly Network and soldiers. They weren't from Luochang and so he didn't know their names. At this moment, Lu Shu was immersing himself in the thought of his ID becoming famous on the Golden Foundation website. Speaking of which, was that person really a Daoyuan student? What he did, can we do that too? Someone had started thinking. These words made everyone wonder about the difference between them and this student. Everyone had fought with those horsemen before and if they couldn't disarm a spear from them, they would know. A horseman's strength was about that of a Class E practitioner at his peak, about 2,700 pounds of strength. A Class E Heavenly Network member wouldn't be able to achieve what Lu Shu did. It would make sense if he was a Class D and he must have entered Class D quite a while ago. Amongst all the Daoyuan students in Yuzhou, there were only 3 Tier A aptitude students who have entered Class D and had only recently been imparted a training method. Even these students couldn't achieve such a feat. Everyone couldn't figure it out. Could it be that this person isn't a student? Could he be a foreign expert? Wait, someone suddenly said, what if he awakened as a strength type? Aren't there over 10 strength type metahumans in Yuzhou? Yeah, that's right. If he was a strength type then it makes sense. After all, strength types are much stronger than all of us. At this time, all the soldiers, Heavenly Network members, and Daoyuan students were shocked and gathered on the cliff. After hearing the detailed explanation, 2 Luochang Daoyuan students linked it to the infamous strength-type metahuman Lu Shu. They looked at each other and tried to recall the looks of that person and compared it to Lu Shu. If not for the reminders, they would not have recognized that dirt-covered face. But no matter how dirty, the overall face shape was the same and he was easily recognizable. That person just now was Lu Shu. Ever since the arm wrestling incident, Lu Shu was definitely ranked top 3 in the most known figures in Luochang Daoyuan class. When Lu Shu awakened the second times, everyone was there to witness it and as of now, the top 3 ranking was roughly Chao Qingzi, Lu Shu then Lu Li. The 2 Daoyuan students said grimacingly, you guys are right, he's really a Class E strength-type metahuman and his name's Lu Shu. He's our Daoyuan class schoolmate. Only after hearing what you said could we confirm that, for sure, it was him. The practitioners looked at one another, so it was a Class E strength-type metahuman, not some foreign expert. They had seen plenty of Class F strength types and just that one Class D strength type who awakened so easily but was killed. Someone asked curiously, did he raise his strength type class to Class E through completing training? Completing training could simultaneously increase awakened powers wasn't a secret in the Heavenly Network. As soon as that person finished his sentence, they noticed a troubled look on the two students' face. No, he has a Tier F aptitude and did not have much progress with training. The two of them gave everyone a rundown on Lu Shu's arm wrestling incident, and the gist of it was that arm wrestling this guy called Lu Li would help you awaken. Everyone was shocked. Awakening is so easy. But thinking about it, even as a Class E strength-type metahuman, it was an extremely difficult feat for a student to be able to adapt to this remains and face skeleton so courageously. Look at these group of Daoyuan students, all are wusses. But everyone understood that incubated flowers being terrified under such conditions was a natural reaction, but this also filtered out the brave ones. That Lu Shu student from just now had already hidden inside the mountain gap. His patience was really admirable, and the experts from the Heavenly Network all felt that they weren't as good as Lu Shu. The following execution was smooth and flawless as he snatched the spear and ran. It all seemed to be part of his plan. Truthfully, no one ever thought that a Daoyuan student could achieve such a feat. But after considering what those two students said, the practitioners were suddenly foolishly excited. Do you know where Lu Li is? Chapter 137. Lu Shu held onto his two spears and leaned against a withered tree inside the mountain gap, as he gleefully calculated his fruitful harvest after entering the remains. After some calculations, 2 spears, 1 axe, 1 sword, and 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. 24 fruits. And he roughly knew the plight the others were in. They must be lacking food and clothes and constantly worried about a skeleton attack. Be it the Heavenly Network or Daoyuan students, there weren't that many experts. In comparison, Lu Shu was having it easy. As he was still calculating, he suddenly received lines of distress points from Lu Xiaoyu, about 10 plus each time, but the frequency was high. Could the young lady be missing me? Lu Shu could picture in his head Lu Xiaoyu at home grumbling about why he still had not returned, and thinking about this was heartwarming. Wonder if Lu Xiaoyu had been living well these few days. Did she manage to find the potato chips I'd hidden in the wardrobe? I have to return alive, it's a must. A night had passed, and at the Heavenly Network's temporary base, someone was observing the movements of the skeleton cavalry. These few days, they were exhausted. They had to consider their best option to take down this group of cavalry while minimizing casualties, before they could enter the next level of the area. They also had to dispatch people to retrieve lost Daoyuan students, soldiers, and members of the Heavenly Network. Only by amassing more combat personnel could they increase their chances of winning. As for the Daoyuan students here, they felt that they were responsible for their safety. To them, no matter how disappointing the Daoyuan students were, it was their job to protect them. It wasn't because of how important Daoyuan students were or how the students' lives were more than theirs, but because in their eyes, the Daoyuan students were still children. It would be expected that after this remains incident, the death of many Daoyuan students would incur a huge uproar from the public, and as for how the Heavenly Network would deal with that, it was unsure. Those parents from a peaceful era would react very strongly upon losing their own children, and what the combat personnel could do was to save as many as they could. This was their job. Shh! *T, come look, the person on sentry at the cliff suddenly shouted. Everyone ran over. What happened? Another horseman had his spear stolen. Everyone gasped. They looked closely, and indeed, the first one that got robbed was killed by the sniper while the one who got robbed yesterday was still there. But this morning, another horseman's spear had gone missing. This is absolutely crazy. Why does he want so many spears? Someone asked. Perhaps to sell for money. In the early morning, Lu Shu excitedly carried the 3 spears and made his way through the mountain gap when he suddenly received a wave of distress points. He checked and found out that it was the same group of people from yesterday. Although this time wasn't much, Lu Shu was elated. These were his fans. He never thought that anyone would become his fans after being disgusted by his comments. Someone from the Heavenly Network side suddenly suggested, "Why don't we wait for him to steal all the cavalry's weapons before we make our move?" Everyone was suddenly silent and looked towards the person who said that. Your idea is possible. Why was the skeleton cavalry feared? One reason was that they had little weak spots and you'd have to break their skulls to kill them, and secondly, their weapons were extremely sharp and capable of killing people quickly. If this cavalry was disarmed, then their level of danger would be greatly reduced. Why not just wait for Lu Shu to rob all of them first? But the Class D leader frowned. That won't work. Our rations will not last till then, and let's talk about roles. Are we going to rely on a Daoyuan student who we're supposed to protect? Have you thought about the possibility that he would misstep and lose his life? My advice is to not take advantage of such a situation, as we're all ex-army soldiers after all. All the soldiers and Heavenly Network members heard what he said. Sorry, we did not consider it carefully. All right, continue observing. The best case would be for us to find this student called Lu Shu. Find him. Where to find? It was dawn and Lu Shu took an opportunity while it was still bright to rob another horseman. Seeing that his plan to get rich was about to succeed, Lu Shu thought that the Heavenly Network would never let these weapons stay in the hands of individuals. The remains belonged to the country, so how could they be yours only? Outside the remains, everyone would be able to see the weapons you carry, and they were bound to be confiscated. But according to Jiang Shui, the Heavenly Network was meritocratic. After helping them obtain so many weapons, they would definitely reward Lu Shu one way or another. Given the current situation, the next training method after the mysterious census chapter would be imparted based on an individual's contributions. So could the reward be imparting the next chapter? Maybe even magical stones? Lu Shu felt that the chance of this was quite small, as they had already given out quite some stones and there was a production limit. Lu Shu reckoned that the Heavenly Network would not have extras. And he couldn't even sell the magical stones. Who knows when a black market would appear? Then it would complicate. He didn't need the training method and magical stones couldn't be sold yet. The rewards from the Heavenly Network were of little help to him. But Lu Shu wasn't worried. He felt that this was quite interesting and he wasn't at risk of getting injured. Wait, although I don't need the subsequent chapters of the training method, those rich second generations would definitely need them. At this moment, they do not have any ways of earning credit, so what's so bad about me giving them away? With regards to exchanging credit for training methods, Lu Shu was very sure about it. Shi Fei had been stuck at Class E for a long while but immediately rose to Class D after killing those fugitives. Anyone could have guessed what happened. By that time, while everyone was still stuck on the mysterious census chapter, Lu Shu's customers could use the exchange of these weapons for the next chapter. Such exchanges would definitely interest many rich kids. With this, the weapons he got would become useful. But he also had to leave himself one for self-protection in the remains. This was also to prevent suspicions from others who may wonder why Lu Shu didn't need the next chapter. But the payment was a problem. No one brought that much cash into this remains and there weren't any ATM machines to draw money to. Lu Shu was disappointed. It was impossible to start any form of business in this *TTY place. Chapter 138. New Skill 1. Lu Shu was racking his brain over the problem of payment, and when he thought about how many spears he had to steal, it was the method to securing a good future. Just then, Lu Shu felt that something was not right. Just when he went over a small mountain, he noticed there were 4 skeletons clad in armor waiting for him. Each of them wielded a spear, and when he looked back, there were another 4 skeletons walking towards him. Ambush. A heavy ambush. The skeletons were constantly silent but advanced towards Lu Shu slowly. They moved without a sound even on the rocky mountain path. Lu Shu was still looking down on the intelligence of those skeleton horsemen for falling prey to his stealing of their spears so many times. Only now did he realize that he had underestimated them. That skeleton squad did not have any big reaction when their spears were stolen and carried on chasing Lu Shu, eventually giving up. Lu Shu was still thinking why these skeletons had such poor memory, but in actual fact, they already had another squad lying in ambush for him. It was one entire skeleton squad. He was in too much trouble this time. Lu Shu was in a debacle. The other party had a good position as well, covering his front and rear. Both of his sides were cliffs of at least 100 meters high, there was no way of escaping. Just then, the 8 surrounding skeletons didn't look to be in a rush at all, taking their steps one at a time. And Lu Shu wasn't one who would give up a fight. The skeletons, with their spears, started walking faster and they suddenly transitioned into a sprint towards Lu Shu, while he was still silently considering how he could break out of this debacle. He wasn't confident of beating 8 soldiers in one go. In an instant, Lu Shu moved. He raised his spear in one hand and twisted his waist, focusing his celestial energy simultaneously. This series of actions was completed swiftly and the spear glowed brightly. The spear, like a bolt of lightning, gave off a thunderous sound and was sent towards one of the skeletons. Lu Shu had too much strength and the speed was not something the skeletons could match. This spear was like a dragon, tearing this skeleton's skull apart and crushing it into bits. Lu Shu's movements did not stop. His 3 spears were released all at once like 3 bolts of lightning. He used the spears like javelins, sending them out even before his opponents neared him. His moves were absolutely stunning. Lu Shu subconsciously thanked Li Xianyi for training his swings previously. If he had not gone through all those gripping and swinging techniques, the spears he threw out might not have hit these skeletons so accurately. At this time, the wall formed by the 4 skeletons initially was no longer existent. Lu Shu drew his metal sword from his back and dashed towards this gap in the wall. He didn't intend to clash head-on with these skeletons. If all skeleton squads comprised 10 skeletons, 2 more had yet to appear. Lu Shu was unsure if they would suddenly appear to cause damage to Lu Shu. Lu Shu wanted to run, and the skeleton left in front of him had already pointed his spear at Lu Shu. Like a venomous snake, the spear stabbed towards Lu Shu's heart. At the instant, before the spear made contact, Lu Shu twisted his body and sent his sword right into the skull of the skeleton. The skeleton dropped onto the ground and crumbled into a pile of bones. Almost instantly, Lu Shu had gotten rid of 4 skeletons. Lu Shu's sudden idea of throwing spears seemed to give him a new idea. He had one concern prior to this battle. Although his physique and skills were much more superior, these skeletons had seamless teamwork and fine weapons which he might have trouble facing. Once the opponent had numbers, even Lu Shu would be afraid of going up close. What if he lost his focus and accidentally lost a limb to one of their strikes? How could he carry on in future? But with this new technique of spear throwing, he had eliminated the previous need to go up close to the skeletons to kill them. It was a new type of attacking move. As long as he had enough strength and he could throw accurately, Lu Shu could probably survive a whole squad of skeletons. This was a technique which was hard for others to replicate. After all, normal practitioners would be Class C when they reach his level of physique. They would be able to manipulate swords and there would be no need to throw spears. As for the lower classes, no one had strength anywhere close to his. He could even claim that if strength-type metahumans never went through Li Xianyi's training, they could never reach Lu Shu's level of precision and accuracy with his technique. At this moment, Lu Shu was extremely joyous as it was like he unlocked a huge possibility. As long as he had enough spears, he could easily take on a skeleton squad. Although it was a tricky technique and it wasn't a head-on fight, he could still eliminate his enemies. Lu Shu dashed forward frantically. Just as the skeleton disintegrated in front of him, Lu Shu obtained the spear from him and threw it at another one as he turned around, killing yet another skeleton. The previous 3 spears he launched flew further and Lu Shu dashed towards it to retrieve it. Without much hesitation, he sent it flying again. Clashing sounds echoed before the world fell silent once more. This battle raised Lu Shu's energy and morale. A new confidence surged from within Lu Shu, and it was a huge will to battle, as if there was nothing in this world which he could not face. But Lu Shu was very aware that he wasn't invincible. The sword manipulation of a Class C was much faster than his thrown spear, and he would definitely lose against an expert of Class C. The remaining 2 skeletons were still yet to be seen. Lu Shu did not know where they were hidden but was now fearless. After this battle, Lu Shu had 11 spears in his possession. Moreover, he had 8 more broadswords. This rich battle loot gave Lu Shu an awesome feeling. Now this was a real big business. As for the armor, 1 slab weighed 100 pounds and Lu Shu didn't want to waste his effort to take them along. It was too much of a drag for him to bring along all the armor. Neither did he want to wear it as he couldn't get past his fear of wearing a dead person's equipment. It wasn't about respecting the dead, it was just that it was extremely embarrassing to wear the belongings of a dead person. So Lu Shu left the armor as they were. Lu Shu now dragged along a bundle of spears and broadswords, and from far, it looked as if he just came back from a day of firewood chopping. Chapter 139. Continue exploring. 2. How do we find that Lu Shu? This matter became a difficult problem for the members of the Heavenly Network who witnessed Lu Shu's amazing feat initially. They wanted to wait for Lu Shu to appear again and give him some sort of signal to join them. Their group will be much more powerful with the addition of Lu Shu. At this stage, their talismans were not of much use on the skeletons as they were immune to injuries from flames and explosions. It would be useful if the explosive talisman could blow up the skeletons, but it wasn't strong enough. Which was why at this time, pure strength was the strongest form of combat power. Everyone used to think that strength-type metahumans were too simple, but regardless of how everyone looked down on strength usually, they did not think that way anymore. Just their speed alone was an issue which caused many problems. Seems like he's not appearing anymore. It's likely that he's resting or he went to another place, someone said. The Class D leader frowned, led those who were in charge of recruiting lost people to focus their target on the opposing mountain. Firstly, see if there are any survivors. Secondly, see if there are any clues to finding this Lu Shu. It's okay if we can't find him since we have already identified the leader. We'll make our move in the afternoon. I estimate that our remaining comrades should be moving into the core of the remain around this time too. Within the Heavenly Network, the abilities of practitioners spread amongst different locations were similar. Even though facing the skeletons were tough, everyone had waited and observed for so long. It was time to make a move. All along, they did not think that they couldn't beat these skeletons, but they only wanted to minimize the casualties. And judging from the rations, perhaps men at other locations had the same worry: there was not enough food. They had to make a move now before it's too late. Based on his judgment, others could have already gone in or they weren't too far away from this group. No one knew what it was like in the heart of the Remain after passing the valley. It would be good as long as there was food. 4 troopers of the Heavenly Network received the instructions to start advancing towards the mountain opposite them. They all understood in their hearts that their main objective was to look for traces of Lu Shu. The 4 men started advancing towards the foot of the mountain and started searching. After an hour or so, when they were about to gather at the peak of the mountain, someone shouted, "Come over quickly." The other 3 came over only to notice the armor and the bones on the ground. They counted exactly 8 sets of armor and bones. One of them took a deep breath. Who did this? There's no blood on the floor, no torn clothes or similar items. Does that mean that the person who fought them was unscathed? Was it a total victory? How did he do it? Yes, how did he do it? Could it be that other teams met with this skeleton squad here? But we never noticed any skeleton squad going up the mountain before. Do you think Lu Shu killed them all by himself? In these few days, he's the only person alive we've seen on this mountain. There wasn't anyone here a few days ago when we were here searching for survivors, was there? One of them asked with a strange expression. It can't be. No matter how strong he is, he's still a Class E strength-type metahuman. It's impossible for him to kill all these skeletons without a single injury. If he had this ability, why did he have to steal weapons? Couldn't he have exterminated that other skeleton squad? That makes sense. Previously he was behaving sneakily with the spears, which meant that he wasn't confident of defeating an entire skeleton squad. But do you guys see this? There's not a single weapon here. I somehow feel that this is his style. He might have an accomplice, we wouldn't know. Let's go back and report all this information. Once the people at their base heard of this, they were silent with shock. Someone actually managed to kill an entire skeleton squad on the opposing mountain and escaped unscathed. How was that possible? They could never possibly figure out that Lu Shu came up with a new offensive technique. Whoever had such powerful weapons would definitely be afraid to lose them. After all, there were so limited amount of weapons. But Lu Shu had too many weapons. Even after throwing one, he still had extras. Was it Lu Shu? The leader asked. We're not sure. We didn't see him, but we already searched that mountain before and there are no other survivors. It might be other practitioners as well. After all, there's no form of communication here and no one could say for sure if it's other practitioners. In the end, everyone agreed with the latter theory, other practitioners did it and not Lu Shu. Because they could not accept the notion that Lu Shu managed to do all that by himself. Meanwhile, Lu Shu wasn't worried about exposing himself while carrying so many weapons. He was known as a Class E strength-type metahuman and had nothing much to hide from other people. He didn't need to keep the spear throwing a secret as well. He would tell them he was proud of his strength if anyone asks. All this would further establish his identity as a strength-type metahuman and conceal the other secrets he had as a metahuman. To Lu Shu, everything was fine as long as he didn't reveal his system, celestial map as well as the mystery of his aptitude. Everything else didn't seem much of a problem. In the eyes of others, he was still that Class E metahuman with Tier F potential who would stop improving any time. Lu Shu was rather depressed. Lu Li would likely not arm wrestle him anymore, and he would have to stagnate at Class E for a long time. Of course, as long as Lu Li did not disgust him in future, there was no need for him to annoy him. At this moment, Lu Shu already had the ability to fight a skeleton squad, so he wanted to continue searching for the heart of the remain. Lu Shu was still pondering over why he didn't see many people throughout his journey. Could it be that everyone was transported into the core right from the start? If this was the case, there weren't many people outside, so there should definitely be quite a commotion inside. No one knew what this remain was like and everything was based on guesses. As for the notion of starting a big business, Lu Shu counted the 11 spears on his back and decided to attack the skeleton squad patrolling the entrance in the afternoon, before entering the heart of the remains through via the valley. The current Lu Shu exuded immense confidence. Chapter 140. Invincible type of metahuman. 3. The Heavenly Network had already decided to make a move on the same skeleton squad. After the failure of the sniper previously, it was difficult to find suitable vantage points for snipers, so they had to approach the enemy directly. After they had confirmed the leader of the skeleton squad, they just had to cooperate with the Class D leader to kill the skeleton. Then, they could reduce the competency and teamwork of the skeleton squad. Before the execution of the plan, the Heavenly Network's men emphasized once more that their priority was to reduce the number of casualties in the face of danger. Everyone nodded silently, no one wished to die here. At this moment, this team had already amassed more than 100 people. But of these 100 people, only about 20 of them were fighters from the Heavenly Network and the remaining people were all soldiers or Daoyuan students. Within these 20 members of the Heavenly Network, everyone was Class E apart from the Class D leader. Those who participated in the exploration of the remain in Shibei said that this remain was indeed much stranger than other remains, The previous remain was like an adventure and exploration. There wasn't so much battling and bloodshed. The leader had a sudden thought. If all these students were as good as Lu Shu, his team would have broken out from this stalemate long ago. What was a small skeleton squad compared to more than 100 of them? They would eradicate them easily. But the reality was often different from ideals. Just yesterday, he had wanted to motivate everyone using Lu Shu as an example, but realized that he had underestimated the fear everyone had towards this whole experience. There was no choice, all these couldn't be forced upon them. He just wished for them to survive while the members of the Heavenly Network took ownership of the situation. Once they leave this place, he would report this incident to the higher management. There was not much point in wasting so much resources in developing all these Daoyuan students who didn't seem to be of much help. In reality, there were very little metahumans who could fight aggressively and enthusiastically. It would take lots of real practice and training. The 20 or so members of the Heavenly Network waited at the top of the mountain for their opportunity. Their plan was to jump down when the skeleton squad passed by and split their squad into 2 groups to divert the battle. This would restrict their teamwork and their overall competency. "They're here," someone said seriously. Gallops echoed from the valley and each sound thumped like the sound of a beating heart. Everyone was extremely cautious. As the atmosphere became tenser, their palms became covered in cold sweat as well. The skeleton squad walked compactly towards their direction, and luckily for the team of Heavenly Network members, the skeletons did not seem prepared. The leader raised his hand and everyone fixated their gaze on him, waiting for his command. But just when he was about to send the signal to attack, there was a sound of a huge wind from far away. To their surprise, a spear flew towards the skeleton squad like a bolt of lightning. No one had any time to react as they looked at the spear, which exuded a brilliant light, pierced through the skull of the skeleton at the rear. His skull was instantly smashed into debris. Everyone was stunned. What happened? Whose immensely powerful spear was this? It destroyed the skull of the skeleton right in front of their eyes. Just as they were wondering what happened, spears started soaring like dragons towards the skeleton squad. Their trajectories were straight and beautiful, without a single dip in height. From this, it could be seen how physically strong the thrower of the spears actually was. The skeleton skulls were destroyed one after another before they could even react. Just then, a teenager dashed into the view of everyone. The teenager was carrying a bundle of spears, and with every spear he launched, he would retrieve another one from his back. He was untouched by the arrows that were being fired at him by the skeletons. He actually dodged every single arrow. The air was stale and dry. In this silence, a spear suddenly dashed in. It broke the silence momentarily, and Lu Shu, wielding the spear, dashed forward. His technique, together with the strength in his arms, was enough to destroy everything in his path. The initial spears were enough to destroy the skeleton skulls. But with Lu Shu running, the strength of the spears increased even more. This time, as the spear pierced through the skull, it didn't just split into debris. In a flash, the skull split into ash-like white powder. It was a power which could not be stopped. When 9 skeleton horse riders were dead, the valley fell into silence once more. Lu Shu, someone managed to point out the identity of the teenager. Is this the power of a strength-type metahuman? The once despised strength-type metahuman appeared in front of other people once more. In the past, everyone would think that physique and physical attacks were not enough to make an impact. As once everyone reaches Class D, talismans and spells would make it hard for strength-type metahumans to even get close. But when a strength-type metahuman could use such a spear-throwing technique, he could be so much more powerful. And the current Lu Shu was merely Class E, even if the others reached Class D. Would they truly be able to go up against a Class D strength-type metahuman? Didn't this mean that for strength-type metahumans even below Class C, with the right equipment and weapons, they were invincible? Of course, this was still the start of the rejuvenation of a magical era. Perhaps even more metahumans could use their strength more effectively. But what about those normal practitioners who were yet to reach Class C? Someone thought. If that Class D fugitive had used such a technique, he would probably have been a much bigger problem. No. Under such a circumstance, it would probably be hard to get stuff to throw as attacks. But Lu Shu at this moment had many weapons to use as javelins. Someone looked at Lu Shu in confusion. How did this guy get so many spears? They, comprising more than 20 members of the Heavenly Network, only had 2 spears. Speaking of which, the 8 skeleton corpses we found this morning might have been killed by him. Everyone thought, damn. Since he had so many spears with him, it had to be him. 2 Luochang Daoyuan students looked in dejection. Could this douche really be so strong? Luckily he was from a different class. To the people in the remains, although Lu Shu's Tier F aptitude would probably mean his future wasn't as bright, he was one of the strongest practitioners in the remain here and now.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty. Man, we just putting on the show. Try to look to the heavens to tell us things